Hello.
Hello.
I have a very simple question. How do I know that I'm present? So how do I know that I'm rooted in the present moment? Because the other day you mentioned that meditation means the absence of thinking, but cannot we be aware while we are thinking?
Why?
While we are thinking. Is it possible to think at the same time? And if you would describe the present moment, if you feel yourself aware and present, then what would you say? How does it feel like? So how can we be sure that we are present?
Yeah. Difficult question. I think you said simple. I say difficult. Presence or awareness or the thoughtless state, in order to understand what it is, you need to experience it, because otherwise you won't know what it is. In the same way that for you to know what an apple is, or a banana, or honey, you have to taste it. Otherwise, no explanation will get you there. The question is, your mind is perhaps asking what is presence, and is trying to understand what presence is. And it's quite possible that you already experience moments of presence here, perhaps at this very moment, when right now, perhaps for a few seconds, you're just listening, and when I stop speaking for a few seconds now, perhaps you're not thinking. Don't say anything. And when I stop speaking again, I sometimes use my hands to symbolize inner space, creating that inner space, and in that space there's no thought. Thought is here. And then you go like that, and then for a few seconds, maybe, you'll tell me afterwards, not now, for a few seconds, like now, there's no thought. And the mind doesn't know what to do with that. There was just a space of no thought. There's nothing to understand, there was just a space of no thought. And at first, now you can say to me, whether to us,
I felt, but this is nothing special.
That's where you're wrong. At first, you're right, at first, that is what it feels like from the point of view of the thinking mind, because it is a non-event, a complete non-event. So it's not interesting whatsoever, and it doesn't feel special whatsoever to the mind. So you have to allow yourself to be there more often in order to deepen it, so that you realize the depth and the power of that which at first seems completely unimportant. It's the tiniest thing that is the most, it's seemingly the tiniest thing which is the most important thing in your life. It is you could almost say it is nothing because it has no form. So just have a little bit of trust and do not allow your mind to eliminate the arising presence because it can't explain it fully, it doesn't make sense to it, it gets bored with it because the mind is looking for something interesting. And presence is not interesting. In the same way that a wonderful sunset or sunrise isn't interesting, but it's gradually something arises that is deeper than the person. At first it's like nothing. I sometimes use the analogy of, let's say you've spent several hours in a noisy nightclub, deafened by the noise, and then finally, and it happens to be that this nightclub is in the middle of a forest in a tent, and finally you can't stand it anymore, or you get tired of the noise, the deafening noise, being bombarded by it. You step outside, the doors, big thick doors close behind you, and there you are, standing in the middle of the forest in the night, but you cannot detect the subtle noises and presences and energy field in that forest. The forest is pervaded by an energy field that's intensely alive. And you hear occasional sounds of an owl or an animal moving. There's an intense aliveness pervading the forest, and it's a sacred forest. You don't know any of that. You've just stepped out. Your senses are not attuned to that subtlety of the forest because you've just come out of this noisy disco. In this analogy, the noisy discotheque is your mind. So when you step out of that into presence or the present moment, you feel a bit lost. Oh, there's nothing going on here, because all your senses cannot be attuned to it yet. You have to wait a little, give it time, and then stay there and remain alert. Take a few steps, and gradually a totally different vibrational frequency manifests itself to you, totally different from the vibration in the discotheque, which is the human mind. And then gradually you feel the power of the forest. And so that is an analogy to help you and to have some trust, so that, and this is an important question because it happens to many humans. In some humans, even if they've never come into contact with any of a teaching of presence or mindfulness or awareness, in some humans it arises occasionally, spontaneously, in certain situations. They suddenly go, oh, and so they feel good, but they don't know what it is. It doesn't seem important at all, and immediately the mind comes in and takes them out again. Nobody has pointed out to them that becoming still, the ability to become still, is the most important thing that could happen in your life. Nobody has pointed it out. So when humans become still spontaneously, as it often happens to humans, it's a very short-lived moment, and it's given almost no importance by the mind. The mind immediately comes in and says, you should be thinking about your problems. Don't waste your time. Whatever the mind tells you, whatever according to its conditioning. So it's the most important thing. So please stay with it. give yourself that space, and don't allow your mind. Why don't you give it? You can make a contract with yourself. Give it 1 year, where you go to that presence that seems so uninteresting. Go there as much as you can, or through the inner body, through sense perceptions, invite it into your life. If nothing changes, if after a year it hasn't deepened and so on, then go back into the discotheque and live there. So I'm glad you asked that question, because many people experience what you experience, something that seems so insignificant turns out to be the most powerful thing in your life. So I wish you luck and hope to see you in a year's time outside the discotheque.
Thank you.